First, we'll give you a couple of minutes, just particular things you want to rebut, and then we'll go back to them for similar. And then I've got a few questions, and then the audience will have questions.
Well, thank you, Representative. One thing that would be useful is to go back to a comment that was made earlier about a high-speed rail project that was brought to Texas back in the 80s. That was a project that was TGV, a French equipment. I think John Connolly was involved in that. Texas was a very different state in the 1980s. One of the differences, significantly, is that Southwest Airlines was doing short haul. And they really had their model for just doing the short haul. Part of that was bolstered by federal legislation called the Wright Amendment, and it protected Southwest Airlines, and the Wright Amendment went away recently. So Southwest Airlines has changed its model. Maybe you've noticed they're no longer depending on short haul, they're doing long haul. They're even international now, out of the Hobby Airport. So they've significantly changed their model, and that wasn't a government project, and this isn't either. You know, this is absolutely the private sector. So imagine, the U.S. Postal Service doesn't make money, but UPS and FedEx have come in and they've found niches within the delivery system where they can be very, very profitable. In fact, I think one of the founders of FedEx was laughed out of his business class. A lot of the skepticism maybe we see tonight, he saw in his business class when he did his MBA saying, I think there's a niche here. Well, that's what the private sector's doing. They're willing to put billions of dollars at risk. And it's fascinating that we have this hand-wringing, second-guessing, very sophisticated economic models of the private sector that are willing to put their money at risk and not put it on the government. So this really is a Tea Party train in that it doesn't take government subsidies. For the libertarians, we're not asking for any new laws. We do have eminent domain authority that we won't be using except in the very rarest of instances. We choose not to use it. We're going in and we're offering land values. Judge Lamont's right. We're sending out thousands of letters because we want to offer for land. We're in the process of purchasing parcels, and we're having good success. The free market's working. And we'll have an announcement on that in January, and you'll get to hear about the landowners that think that we've been not only fair, but we've been good neighbors in our offering, because we'd rather the landowner have the money than a lawyer have it. And so we're really having some good success there. But the fact of the matter is that there's a different day today than there was when the high-speed rail didn't succeed before. I think that's a very good question that could be raised. Travis can tell you more about the eminent domain because he's been more intimately involved with that. Travis?
Thank you. Good evening. I've met a lot of you several years ago. We've been working on this for quite a long time. Can y'all hear me okay? I want to just speak briefly the comment that Judge Lamont made.
Who are you?
I'm sorry?
Who are you?
I'm sorry. My name is Travis Kelly. Thanks. About the previous authority that was created by the state government to bring about the previous attempt at high-speed rail in Texas. We're not here asking you to trust us. Some of you I just met tonight, some of you I've known for a few years. But the environmental review process that the project is under right now began in the fall of 2014, which is when I met many of you. And it continues today, and that process is by its very nature a very public one. We would encourage all of you to participate very actively in that process. By virtue of all of your participation in that process, the project has become a better one. We never claimed that several of us sitting around a conference room in Houston or Dallas or wherever we happen to be can create the best mousetrap. And ultimately, it's not up to us. The environmental process is very iterative, it's very collaborative, and this project, while our company is private, we are in a very heavily regulated industry. There is state regulation, not just TxDOT, which is involved in the environmental review process, but also Texas Parks and Wildlife, Texas Historical Commission, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. There's a whole alphabet soup, both here and in D.C. Lots of government oversight.
Wander in this direction over here. Is there anything that you all want to rebut that they said or anything? Judge?
Okay, I'm going to follow up on just those two comments. The first, in response to Mr. Mosley's comment he just made about the TJB and the previous SR project in the 80s, my point there was that the regulatory structure was there, the oversight was there for that. And just because Southwest, and I acknowledge Southwest had a change in business, in the market, and they're not as in tune with that market anymore. But just because their business changed doesn't mean we need to throw away that same type of structure and oversight that regulates that type of project and ensures that it justifies the use of eminent domain, and that it's financially feasible, and all these other things. So to move on to Mr. Kelly's point, I'm not sure if you were disagreeing. I didn't catch the disagreement of what your statement was from what I said, but I just want to follow up. His main point was the EIS. It does a lot of things, and it does do a lot of things in what he just described. But here's what an EIS, the environmental impact study, does not do. It does not provide the final approval of the project. It does not consider, does this project justify the use of eminent domain? It does not consider, has this entity raised the money? And is this project financially feasible? Is it going to need taxpayer subsidy? It does not consider any of those things. And so I just wanted to rebut that. There were a few things I wanted to highlight from Mr. Mosley. And not a dime of public money is one. They have announced many times that their claim right tonight was that they're not going to have any taxpayer money involved. Well, it's subsidies, okay, that's the claim. So they have announced they will pursue taxpayer-backed loans and taxpayer-backed bonds. Who here thinks that that's not a subsidy? So we've got 3 people. When that goes belly up, that involves that involves a taxpayer money. So it does involve it. So I certainly feel that's not an accurate representation of the circumstances. And I realize that's an interpretation of what a subsidy is. More trucks on the road. I want to read this this is very important. Mr. Mosley. Okay, well, I'll just recall it. TxDOT has recently announced they are funding to the tune of $70 billion for infrastructure, transportation infrastructure. That more than doubles what it was just a few months ago. And the quote from Governor Abbott is, I'm going to paraphrase, and because I wanted to quote it accurately, I wanted to read the quote, but I will paraphrase and summarize that quote. It's not verbatim, but this is the intended quote. That this funding, more than doubling it over a 10-year period, approved by we, the taxpayers, will adequately keep pace with the population growth. That's his quote for our infrastructure needs. So our government is not saying this project is needed. This is pure profit driven. Pure with a goal of money, making money, not necessarily from profit, is what that is. So I wanted to clarify that. I wanted to clarify that I believe you mentioned the support of the Texas A&M. I just wanted to clarify that Texas A&M student body passed a bill to oppose this train. So the very market that they're claiming is going to ride it is opposing it. Sounds like a hairdryer comment. I do not believe a hairdryer is above 80 decibels. Okay, this train's above 80 decibels. I'm pretty sure that is, of course, an interpretation of it. Pricing, they mentioned pricing compared to rental cars. Pricing that they've advertised in previous is compared to airfare. That's all I've ever heard y'all say. competitive with airfare. So about $180, that round trip ticket is what it costs under proper notice for airfare. That $108 you saw on our presentation was at the request, as a result of that TxDOT study. If they cut the fare and eliminated that stop in Grimes County, right? So that was a TxDOT study figure that was on there. So those are the things I wanted to highlight.
All right, we'll wander back over here and see if there's anything that, we'll sort of give everybody, both sides, a last chance to stew about it for a second, think if there's anything that the other side says that you think is factually inaccurate that you don't want anybody walking out of here believing. So both of y'all cogitate on that for a second.